The roots of Guns N' Roses can be traced back to 1980, with two teenagers in Lafayette, Indiana, Bill Bailey and Jeffrey Isbell, of course later known as Axl Rose and Izzy Stradlin. They had similar musical tastes. Isbell, being the more level-headed one, actually graduated high school and moved to LA right away and started playing in different bands. Bill, in his teenage years, was arrested more than 20 times in Lafayette. When the police threatened to charge him as a career criminal, he moved to Los Angeles in 1982. He tracked down Isbell, who had changed his name to Izzy, and they started collaborating. By that time, bands like Motley Crue and Quiet Riot began to break out of the club scene, and with the novelty of MTV, bands started to become more image-based and more theatrical. Bill changed his name to W. Axl Rose after being in a band called Axl with Izzy and guitarist Chris Webber. The band changed their name to Rose and then finally Hollywood Rose. Already familiar with the others, two childhood friends, guitarist Slash, originally named Saul Hudson, and drummer Steven Adler, very briefly joined Hollywood Rose in 1984, before the band split and sent its members to other bands. Izzy joined a band called London, while Axl got with guitarist Tracy Guns and formed LA Guns. Duff McKagan, who had just started to play bass, moved to LA in late '84 and responded to an ad in The Recycler, and he met Slash and Steven, and the three of them formed Road Crew. In early 1985, Duff received an invitation from Izzy, who had reunited with Axl, to join a new band formed in the remnants of LA Guns and Hollywood Rose. Guns N' Roses originally featured Axl on vocals, Tracy Guns on lead guitar, Izzy on rhythm guitar, and Rob Gardner on drums. Duff was unsure of whether Tracy and Rob were willing to put everything on the line to make it, because they didn't really seem like rock and roll or die kind of people. So he lined up a tour of gigs up the West Coast to test everyone's commitment. When Tracy and Rob backed out, Slash and Steven were ready to step in, and so the classic lineup was formed. The band had great chemistry with each other. Axl's voice was really powerful, and his stage presence was downright legendary. Slash's guitar playing rocked, very bluesy and straightforward. Duff provided a punk attitude from his years of playing in punk bands. Izzy's rhythm provided the ability for Slash to play all of his iconic solos. Steven's drumming was very R&B influenced, and while that added to the sound, the rest of the guys turned him into a straightforward 4-time rock and roll drummer. Duff has been quoted to say, "From the moment the five of us leaned into our first song, we could all hear and feel that the fit was right. The chemistry was immediate, thunderous, and soulful. It was amazing, and all of us recognized it instantly." The band embarked on the Hell Tour, a journey that forced them to hitchhike 1,100 miles to Seattle after their car broke down outside of LA. The whole thing brought them closer together. Tom Zutaut, an A&R man who discovered Motley Crue back in 1981, now working for Geffen Records, saw Guns N' Roses play, and of course he got them signed in March of 1986, and they received a $75,000 advance. Live Like a Suicide was an EP released for the public to keep interest in the band while they worked on their album. Many producers were considered, including Paul Stanley of Kiss. In Slash's biography, he says, "Paul was looking for the right band to launch a side gig behind the mixing board. The first thing he said was, 'I want to rewrite Welcome to the Jungle.' According to Paul, it had potential but lacked an impactful structure." End of quote. Of course, the band passed on him. Mutt Lange and Tom Werman were also considered because of their credentials, but they were way too expensive. Mike Klink ended up producing them, who had produced several Triumph records. The songs that appear on Appetite were mostly written when they were still in their small gigs phase. Welcome to the Jungle was written in 3 hours. Slash already had the main riff, and then the lyrics were inspired by their own experiences in LA. The opening riff to Paradise City came to Slash in the back of a van. Axl sang, "Take Me Down to the Paradise City," and then Slash improvised the iconic chorus. And that's how it happened.
Take me down to the paradise city where the grass is green and the girls are pretty.
Night Train took a while to write. Slash and Izzy worked on the main riff. It was something that inspired them very much, and eventually they made it a celebration of their favorite drink, Night Train. Appetite for Destruction was released on July 21st, 1987, which means this year is its 35th anniversary. The original album cover of Appetite had a surrealist painting as the cover. The band called it a symbolic social statement, but stores wouldn't carry the album because it was deemed controversial, so the artwork with the cross and skulls came about, and I think it's an improvement. Initially, the album stalled for almost a year because at the time, the music business was filled with glam bands like Poison and Rat, so it took a while for people to get where Guns was coming from. They were scared that some of the cable companies would pull from their network, but David Geffen, the founder of the label, convinced MTV to play the video for Welcome to the Jungle, and so they played it once at 4 a.m. But people still took notice and requested it, and so the video was put into rotation. The single Sweet Child of Mine was released in summer 1988, a year after the album. Because it had so much appeal, it was played heavily on radio and MTV. Sweet Child of Mine became their biggest hit and only #1 single. Slash later commented, "I hated that song with a huge passion for the longest time, and it turned out to be our biggest hit, so it goes to show what I know." Because of the success, Appetite reached #1 on the Billboard charts. The band toured extensively for the album, and opened for Motley Crue, The Cult, Alice Cooper, and Aerosmith. In fact, Aerosmith's manager has said, "By the end of the tour, Guns N' Roses were huge. They basically just exploded. We were all pissed that Rolling Stone magazine showed up to do a story on Aerosmith, but Guns N' Roses end up on the cover of the magazine. Suddenly, the opening act was bigger than we were." The band did many appearances on TV, shooting many videos, and has since become one of the most iconic bands of the 80s. Since then, Appetite for Destruction has sold over 30 million copies and is, in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest rock albums ever. Guns went on to release GNR Lies in 1988, an EP of their previous live album, Live Like a Suicide, and some acoustic songs. But because of his drug addiction, Steven Adler was fired and replaced with Matt Sorum, the drummer from The Cult. Then, in 1991, they made history by releasing 2 blockbuster albums simultaneously, becoming the first rock band to ever do that. It's not quite as good as Appetite, but there are some awesome tracks. The band set on a 3-year tour for the 2 albums and added Dizzy Reed as a keyboardist. Then Izzy quit the band after disagreements with the other members, being replaced by Gilby Clarke. After turmoil between the band and another album, 1993's The Spaghetti Incident, a cover album mostly of glam and punk covers, Slash and Duff signed over the rights to the name Guns N' Roses to Axl, and they left for rehab and solo projects. In the 2000s, Slash, Duff, Matt Sorum, Dave Kushner, and Scott Weiland, formerly of Stone Temple Pilots, came together to form the supergroup Velvet Revolver. They released 2 albums which did pretty well, but never to the extent of what GNR did. In 2008, Axl, still carrying the name Guns N' Roses, released Chinese Democracy. Slash and Duff did reunite with Axl, and in 2016 they began the Not in This Lifetime tour. And they also released a couple singles in 2021. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I read Slash's biography to do this video, and it took a long time, so it would be cool if you like and subscribe. Peace out.